A man who had everything except trust Jackson Hayes sat in his glass-walled office on the 45th floor, staring at the city below. At 35, he had built a tech empire worth billions. His company revolutionized cloud computing. His face appeared on magazine covers. His opinions moved markets. Yet as he watched people rushing like ants on the streets below, he felt completely empty inside. "Another successful quarter, sir," Paul Anderson announced, walking in with quarterly reports. Paul had been Jackson's personal assistant for nearly a decade. It's one of the few people who saw past the billionaire facade. Jackson barely glanced at the numbers. "Paul, do you believe people can genuinely care about someone without wanting something in return?" Paul paused mid-step. In 10 years, his boss had never asked such a personal question. "I believe some people can. Yes. Name one person in my life who fits that description." The silence that followed answered Jackson's question more clearly than words ever could. That evening, Jackson returned to his penthouse overlooking the bay. The space was beautiful but sterile. Everything perfectly arranged by professional designers who understood aesthetics, but nothing about making a house feel like home. "Good evening, Mr. Hayes." Rebecca Torres appeared from the kitchen, wiping flour from her hands onto her apron. She had worked as his housekeeper for 6 months, and Jackson had barely noticed her beyond ensuring his home stayed clean. Working late? Just finishing up some baking. I made extra banana bread for the staff break room downstairs. Figured the security team might appreciate a midnight snack." She smiled warmly. The kind of smile that reached her eyes. Jackson found himself actually looking at her for the first time. Rebecca was pretty in an understated way. No designer clothes or expensive jewelry, just simple jeans, a t-shirt, and that genuine smile. "That's thoughtful of you." "Well, they work hard keeping everyone safe." "Seems like the least I could do." She handed him a slice wrapped in paper. "This one's for you. Still warm." After she left, Jackson ate the banana bread. It was slightly burnt on the edges, but somehow perfect. That night, an idea began forming. An idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. The credit card challenge 3 days later. Jackson called an unusual meeting. Paul looked concerned when Jackson explained his plan. "Sir, you want to give unlimited credit cards too for women and observe how they spend the money." "Exactly. No rules, no instructions. Just pure freedom to reveal their true character. That's either genius or a recipe for disaster. Maybe both." Jackson leaned back in his chair. "I want to give cards to Natalie, Olivia, Christine, and Rebecca." Paul raised an eyebrow. "Rebecca? Your housekeeper? She's the only one who has never asked me for anything. Never treated me differently because of my wealth. I'm curious what she'd do with unlimited resources." "And the others?" Jackson smiled grimly. "Natalie will probably throw a party for her social media followers. Olivia will invest in something that benefits her career. Christine will buy whatever makes her look more sophisticated. But Rebecca, I genuinely have no idea." The next morning, Jackson began distributing the cards. Natalie Grant arrived at his office wearing designer everything, her phone already recording. "Babe, I knew you'd come around." She threw her arms around him dramatically. "Are we getting back together?" "This is just a gift, Natalie. A thank you for the good times." She examined the black credit card like it was a rare diamond. Unlimited. "Seriously? For 1 week. Spend it however you want." Natalie's eyes gleamed with possibilities that Jackson was certain had nothing to do with charity or kindness. Olivia Bennett came next. She was always composed, always calculating. "What's the catch, Jackson?" "No catch. Consider it a bonus for your excellent work on the Johnson merger." She studied him carefully. "You never do anything without a reason." "Maybe I'm learning to be spontaneous." Olivia took the card with a professional nod. But Jackson could see her mind already working through strategies and opportunities. Christine Monroe was third. She floated into his office wearing sunglasses indoors and enough perfume to announce her arrival from 3 floors away. "How mysterious." She examined the card with practiced disinterest. "What am I supposed to do with this?" "Whatever brings you joy, How delightfully vague. She smiled in a way that suggested she already had a shopping list prepared. Rebecca was last. Jackson found her reorganizing his home library, humming off key to herself. "Rebecca, do you have a moment?" She turned, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Of course, Mr. Hayes. Did I miss something in the cleaning schedule?" "No. Everything is perfect. I actually have something for you." He handed her the envelope. She opened it carefully, her eyes widening when she saw the card. "Mr. Hayes, I think there's been a mistake." "No mistake. It's yours for 1 week. Spend it however you'd like." "But why?" "I didn't do anything special." "That's exactly why. Just accept it as a thank you." Rebecca held the card like it might explode. "Are you sure you're feeling okay? Because this seems really unusual." Jackson laughed genuinely for the first time in days. "I'm fine. Just trying something different." "Well, okay. Thank you. This is incredibly generous." She looked at the card again. "Though I honestly have no idea what I'll do with it." That's what makes it interesting. The purchases begin over the next few days. Paul tracked all the transactions. The results were exactly what Jackson expected from 3 of the women. Natalie rented a yacht for a social media photo shoot, Paul reported. Cost around $50,000 for the day. She also hired professional photographers and bought designer outfits for her content. Olivia purchased a complete executive wardrobe from 3 different luxury brands. She also enrolled in an exclusive business leadership program and bought a membership to the city's most prestigious networking club. Christine hired an interior designer to redecorate her penthouse. She's also purchased art from 3 different galleries and reserved a table at the most exclusive restaurant every night this week. Jackson nodded, unsurprised. "And Rebecca?" Paul looked at his tablet with a confused expression. "Her purchases are unusual. She bought groceries. A lot of groceries. Then art supplies for children. Then she rented a van." "A van? From a local moving company? For Saturday afternoon? What's she doing with a van full of groceries and art supplies?" "I have no idea, sir." "But she also purchased 300 cupcakes from a bakery and a bunch of balloons." Jackson felt his curiosity spike. "Where is she going Saturday?" Paul checked his notes. "The delivery address is Riverside Children's Hospital. Hospital visit Saturday morning." Jackson made an impulsive decision. He drove to Riverside Children's Hospital, parking across the street where he could observe without being seen. The hospital was old, but well maintained, clearly serving families who couldn't afford fancy private facilities. Jackson watched as the rental van pulled up and Rebecca jumped out wearing jeans and a cheerful sweater. She began unloading boxes with the help of 2 hospital staff members. Jackson could hear her laughter carrying across the parking lot. There was something magnetic about her energy. The way she moved with purpose and joy. Unable to resist, Jackson crossed the street and approached Rebecca. She spun around, nearly dropping a box of cupcakes. "Mr. Hayes, what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same question." She blushed slightly. "I volunteer here sometimes. When you gave me that card, I thought about what would make me happiest. And this place could use some joy. So you bought cupcakes and art supplies? And games and books and some new tablets for the kids who have to stay long-term?" Her eyes lit up as she talked. "These kids are fighting such hard battles. They deserve to feel special, to have fun, to just be kids for a while." A nurse appeared at the entrance. "Rebecca, the kids are so excited. They've been asking about you all morning. I'll be right there." Rebecca turned back to Jackson. "Want to help carry boxes?" "Unless you have billionaire stuff to do." Jackson smiled. "I think this qualifies as billionaire stuff." The next 2 hours transformed Jackson's understanding of Rebecca completely. He watched her interact with children facing terrible diagnoses. She knew each kid by name, remembered their interests, made them laugh even when they were clearly in pain. One little boy, maybe 7 years old, with a bald head from chemotherapy, showed Rebecca a drawing he'd made. "This is you as a superhero," he explained seriously. "You have the power to make people smile even when they're sad." Rebecca knelt down to his level. "Tommy, that's the most amazing superpower anyone could have. Thank you." Jackson helped set up an art station where kids could paint and draw. He found himself actually enjoying the chaos. The paint-covered hands, the crooked smiles, the pure, uncomplicated joy. Mr. Hayes. You've got paint in your hair, Rebecca pointed out. Giggling, he touched his head and found green streaks. How did that happen? Probably when you were helping Melissa with her rainbow project. You're not very good at staying clean. I'm discovering that. As they cleaned up later, Jackson watched Rebecca hug each child goodbye, promising to return soon. She meant it. He could tell. Why do you do this? He asked as they loaded empty boxes back into the van. Do what? Spend your free time here. Give your money to these kids. You could have used that card for yourself. Rebecca leaned against the van, considering the question seriously. Mr. Hayes, I grew up in foster care. I know what it feels like to think nobody cares about you, that you don't matter to anyone. These kids already have enough to deal with being sick. They shouldn't also have to feel forgotten. You were in foster care? From age 3 until 18? Bounced around between 7 different homes. She said it matter-of-factly, without self-pity. Some were okay. Some were not great. But I always remembered the people who showed me kindness for no reason. The teacher who bought me school supplies. The neighbor who invited me for dinner. Small things that meant everything. Jackson felt something shift in his chest. I'm sorry you went through that. Don't be. It taught me what really matters. And it's not the size of your bank account or the brand of your clothes. It's whether you make people feel seen and valued. She smiled. That's why I can never understand your world. Mr. Hayes, all those people at your parties, they're so focused on impressing each other that they forget to actually connect. You're right. Rebecca looked surprised. I am completely right. I've been so focused on protecting my wealth that I forgot to actually live. I stood in the hospital parking lot as the sun began setting, painting the sky orange and pink. Jackson realized this was the most honest conversation he'd had in years. Rebecca, can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you never ask me for anything? In 6 months of working for me, you never once requested a raise or a favor or anything. Because I don't need anything from you except a fair wage for fair work. You pay me well. You're respectful. That's enough. Most people would want more. I'm not most people. She grinned. Besides, I already won the lottery with this job. Your kitchen has that amazing stand mixer that makes baking so much easier. Jackson laughed. You stayed for the kitchen appliances? And the fact that you don't mind when I sing off-key while cleaning? Do you know how rare that is? As they drove back separately, Jackson couldn't stop thinking about Rebecca. Not her appearance or what she could do for him, but who she was as a person. Her kindness wasn't strategic. Her generosity wasn't for show. She simply believed in making the world a little better. One small act at a time. The truth about the others Monday morning. Paul delivered his complete report on all 4 women's spending. Natalie's social media posts have tripled in engagement. She's using your gift as content, calling it the best present from the best ex. She's tagged you in approximately 47 posts. Jackson sighed. Of course she has. Livia purchased everything with clear strategic intent. She's already using her new wardrobe and network contacts to position herself for a promotion. Predictable. Christine threw a party at her newly redecorated penthouse. The guest list included 3 art critics, 2 museum curators, and several wealthy collectors. She's building her reputation as a patron of the arts. And Rebecca? Paul smiled. She spent $12,000 at the children's hospital, another $3,000 on groceries for a women's shelter. She also paid off medical bills for 3 families and bought school supplies for an entire elementary school in a low-income neighborhood. Jackson sat back in his chair. She gave everything away. Not quite everything. She bought herself one thing. What? A Sishermayuen cookbook? According to the receipt notes, it's a beginner's guide to baking without burning everything. Jackson burst out laughing, given unlimited resources. Rebecca had bought children's supplies, helped struggling families, and gotten herself a cookbook so she could improve her baking skills. Paul, I think I just witnessed the most selfless person in the city. The most dangerous, sir. Dangerous. to your carefully constructed emotional walls. Jackson looked out at the city skyline. Paul was right. Rebecca had done something no one else had managed. She had made him want to be better, to care about something beyond profit margins and stock prices. Paul, clear my schedule for tomorrow. I need to do something. What might that be? I need to take a housekeeper to dinner and apologize for being blind for 6 months. About time. Sir, that evening Jackson found Rebecca in his kitchen. Flour in her hair as usual, attempting to bake something that smelled dangerously close to burning. How would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow night? She turned, wooden spoon in hand, looking confused. Like a job evaluation dinner? Did I do something wrong? No, like a real dinner. Just two people getting to know each other. No. She blinked several times. Oh, like a date? If you're comfortable with that. Rebecca looked at her flour-covered apron, then at Jackson in his expensive suit. Mr. Hayes, are you sure? Because I'm pretty sure there are rules about billionaires dating their housekeepers. It's probably in some handbook somewhere. I've never been good at following rules, I've noticed. She smiled. Okay, but I'm warning you, I've never been to a fancy restaurant. I'll probably use the wrong fork, and we won't go to a fancy restaurant. We'll go somewhere real where the forks don't matter. As Jackson left the kitchen, he felt lighter than he had in years. The experiment had revealed exactly what he needed to know. 3 women had shown their true colors through self-serving choices. But Rebecca had shown him something far more valuable. She had shown him that real worth had nothing to do with wealth and everything to do with character. And for the first time in his adult life, Jackson Hayes found himself genuinely excited about getting to know someone. Not for what they could give him, but for who they truly were. The experiment was over, but something far more important was just beginning. The dinner that changed. Everything Tuesday evening arrived with Jackson feeling more nervous than he had before any business presentation. He stood in front of his closet, debating between suits, while Paul watched with barely concealed amusement. Sir, you've changed clothes 4 times? It's just dinner. It's not just dinner, Paul. It's the first honest date I've had in a decade. Might I suggest the navy sweater? Less intimidating than a suit, but still put together. Jackson took the advice. When Rebecca emerged from her small apartment building downtown, he almost didn't recognize her. She wore a simple green dress and had left her hair down. She looked beautiful and terrified. You look wonderful, Jackson said, opening the car door for her. I borrowed this dress from my roommate. She said it's appropriate for dating rich people. Rebecca climbed in awkwardly. I'm still not convinced this is a good idea. Why not? Because you're you, and I'm me. We're from completely different worlds. Jackson started driving toward the waterfront. Maybe that's exactly why it's a good idea. He took her to Mario's, a small Italian restaurant tucked away from the main streets. No fancy decorations, no celebrity clientele, just authentic food and warm atmosphere. I've walked past this place 100 times, Rebecca said as they sat down. Always wondered what it was like inside. My grandfather used to bring me here when I was young. Before the company, before the money got complicated, this is where I learned that the best things in life are simple. Over plates of homemade pasta, their conversation flowed naturally. Rebecca told stories about her childhood in foster care. And Jackson found himself sharing memories he hadn't thought about in years. There was this one foster home, Rebecca said, twirling spaghetti on her fork. The mom, Mrs. Patterson, she taught me to bake. I was terrible at it, burned everything I touched, but she never got mad. She just kept saying that mistakes are how we learn. Is that why you still bake, even though you admit you're not great at it? Exactly. Every burnt cookie reminds me that someone once believed I could get better. And sometimes, I actually do get it right. Like maybe once every 10 attempts. Jackson laughed. Those are better odds than most of my business ventures. Really? I figured billionaires just succeed at everything. We just hide our failures better. He leaned forward. Rebecca, can I ask you something personal? You're buying me dinner? I think that earns you some personal questions. Why did you take the housekeeper job? You're clearly intelligent and capable. You could do anything. Rebecca set down her fork, her expression growing serious. Honest answer? Because I needed stability. I spent 18 years never knowing if I'd be moved to another home, another school, another life. When I aged out of foster care, I wanted something steady. Housekeeping pays the bills and lets me volunteer at the hospital. That's enough for me. What about dreams? Things you want for yourself? She smiled softly. My dreams are smaller than yours, Jackson. I dream about maybe having a small apartment of my own someday, learning to bake a perfect chocolate cake, helping enough kids at the hospital that some of them remember me when they grow up. She paused. What about you? What does a billionaire dream about? No one had asked Jackson that question in years. Everyone assumed they knew what he wanted. More money, more success, more power. Honestly, I dream about feeling something real again. About having relationships that matter more than business deals. About mattering to someone for who I am, not what I have. Rebecca reached across the table and touched his hand gently. You matter, Jackson. Maybe not to those people at your fancy parties, but to the security guards who appreciate my banana bread, to Paul who clearly cares about you, even when you're being difficult, to those kids at the hospital who spent the best Saturday they've had in months because you showed up with paint-covered hands. Jackson felt that tightness in his chest again, the one that appeared whenever Rebecca said something unexpectedly profound, the growing connection over the next 2 weeks. Jackson and Rebecca fell into a comfortable routine. He'd finish work early to help her prepare dinner. She'd tease him about his terrible cooking skills. They'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. One evening, Jackson found Rebecca in his library, curled up in a chair reading one of his grandfather's old books. Finding anything interesting? He asked. She held up the worn copy of poetry. Your grandfather had excellent taste. Listen to this. She read a passage about finding beauty in unexpected places. Jackson sat in the chair across from her. He used to read that to me when I was young. Said the secret to happiness was noticing the small miracles around us every day. He sounds like he was wise. He built the foundation of my company, but never let success change who he was. Jackson smiled sadly. I wish I had inherited that quality. Maybe you did and just forgot about it for a while. Rebecca closed the book carefully. Jackson, can I ask you something? Always. Why did you really give us those credit cards? Paul mentioned it was some kind of test, but that doesn't sound like the whole truth. Jackson had known this conversation would come eventually. He chose honesty. I wanted to see who people really were when they thought no one was judging them. I've been burned by enough gold diggers and social climbers that I started to believe everyone had a price. And what did you discover? That 3 out of 4 people behaved exactly as I expected. But you, he met her eyes, you completely surprised me. You had unlimited resources and used them to help others. No agenda, no performance, just pure generosity. Rebecca looked uncomfortable. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I know. That's what made it so powerful. She stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city. Jackson, I need you to understand something. I didn't grow up with anything, so money doesn't mean to me what it means to most people. I've been hungry, I've been scared, I've been alone. Those experiences taught me that the only thing that really matters is how we treat each other. Jackson joined her at the window. Teach me. Teach you what? How to see the world the way you do. How to find joy in small things. How to actually live instead of just existing. Rebecca turned to face him, her eyes searching his. Are you sure you want that? Because once you start seeing things differently, you can't go back. You'll notice every fake smile, every calculated gesture, every relationship built on transactions instead of truth. I'm already noticing those things. You've ruined me for shallow interactions. Laughed. Sorry about that. Don't be. Jackson reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Rebecca, you've given me something I didn't know I needed. Hope. Hope for what? That genuine connection still exists. That someone can care about me without wanting something in return. That maybe I'm worth more than my bank account. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. Jackson, you're worth everything. The company, the money, the success, those are just things you've done. but who you are, the person who spent Saturday painting with sick kids, the man who remembers his grandfather's poetry, the guy who's trying so hard to learn how to be real again. That person is extraordinary. Jackson kissed her then, soft and gentle. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. This is probably a terrible idea, Rebecca whispered. Probably the worst idea I've ever had. Your rich friends are going to hate me. Then they were never really friends. The charity gala preparation, 2 days later. Jackson proposed an idea that made Rebecca nearly drop the dish she was washing. You want me to do what? Organize a fundraising gala for the children's hospital. You know what they need better than anyone? Jackson, I don't know how to organize a gala. I barely know how to organize my own closet. You organized that entire day at the hospital perfectly. You made it special and meaningful. That's what this gala needs. Rebecca dried her hands on a towel, looking panicked. But I'd have to speak in public. To rich people, who all know how to properly pronounce words like philanthropy. Philanthropy. Exactly. See, I can't even say it right. Jackson pulled her close. Rebecca, those rich people need to hear from someone who actually cares. Someone who's not doing it for tax breaks or social status. Someone real. I'll embarrass you. Impossible. Use the wrong fork at dinner. Be too many forks for anyone to notice. I'll probably trip walking up to the podium. Then I'll catch you. Despite her protests, Rebecca agreed. The next 3 weeks became a whirlwind of preparation. Jackson hired an event planner, but Rebecca insisted on being involved in every decision. We're not having caviar, she announced during one planning meeting. Do you know how many medical supplies we could buy with caviar money? The event planner looked horrified. But Miss Torres, it's expected at these functions. Then let's exceed expectations by actually using the money for what matters. Jackson watched her negotiate and compromise, always bringing the conversation back to the children who would benefit. She had a natural ability to make people care about what she cared about. One evening, they practiced her speech in his living room. Rebecca stood nervously, note cards shaking in her hands. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rebecca Torres, and I'm here tonight to talk about children who need your help. Oh. She paused, looking at Jackson. This is terrible. I sound like a robot reading a manual. Stop reading the cards. Just talk to me about the kids. Rebecca set down the cards. Tommy loves drawing superheroes. He's 8 and brave beyond belief. Sarah sings constantly, even though chemo makes her tired. Little Miguel collects smooth stones because he says each one has a story. Her voice grew stronger. These kids are fighting battles no child should face. They need more than medical treatment. They need hope, joy, and people who see them as kids first and patients second. Perfect, Jackson said. That's exactly what you should say, really. But I didn't use any fancy words. You used something better. Truth. The night before the gala, Rebecca had a complete breakdown in Jackson's kitchen. He found her sitting on the floor, surrounded by outfit options, crying. I can't do this, she sobbed. I'm going to stand in front of all those important people and make a fool of myself. They'll laugh at the foster kid who thinks she belongs in their world. Jackson sat down beside her on the floor. Rebecca, look at me. She did, tears streaming down her face. You belong anywhere you choose to be. Those people aren't better than you. They're just richer. And tomorrow night, you're going to remind them what actually matters. What if I freeze? What if no words come out? Then I'll walk up on stage and stand beside you until they do. Promise? Promise. The gala night, the Metropolitan Ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and elegant decorations. Jackson stood near the entrance, watching guests arrive in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. He spotted Natalie making a grand entrance, already filming for social media. Jackson, darling? She air-kissed near his cheeks. What an important cause. I'm so moved. My followers are going to love this content. Livia arrived next, scanning the room with strategic eyes. Impressive turnout. You've positioned yourself well with this charitable angle. Christine floated in wearing something that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Philanthropy is so fashionable this season. Then Rebecca arrived, and Jackson's breath caught. She wore a midnight blue dress, simple but elegant. Her hair was swept up, and she looked terrified and beautiful. "I'm going to throw up," she whispered when he reached her side. "You look stunning. I look like I'm playing dress-up in someone else's life. You look like yourself. Just fancier." The dinner proceeded smoothly until it was time for Rebecca's speech. Jackson watched her walk to the podium, her hands trembling slightly. She stood before the microphone, looking at the crowd of 300 wealthy guests, and froze. The silence stretched. Jackson started to stand, ready to join her as promised. Then Rebecca spoke. "I'm scared right now," she admitted. "I've never spoken to this many people before. I've definitely never spoken to this many people wearing dresses that cost more than my annual salary." A nervous laugh rippled through the crowd. "Here to impress you with fancy words or statistics? I'm here to tell you about children who are fighting for their lives." She abandoned her notes completely and spoke from her heart. She told stories about Tommy, Sarah, Miguel, and a dozen other children. She made the audience laugh with funny anecdotes and cry with descriptions of their struggles. "These kids don't need your pity," Rebecca said, her voice strong now. "They need your help. They need equipment that makes their treatments less scary. They need playrooms where they can forget about being sick for a while. They need to know that strangers care enough to make their hard days a little easier." She paused, looking directly at the audience. "I grew up in foster care. I know what it feels like to think nobody cares about you. These children are already dealing with illness. They shouldn't also have to feel forgotten. So I'm asking you tonight, not as someone from your world, but as someone who understands theirs, please help us give them hope." The ballroom erupted in applause. Jackson felt pride swell in his chest. Rebecca had done it, and she'd done it by being completely, authentically herself as she left the stage, slightly dazed by the response. Jackson met her halfway. "You were incredible. Forgot half my prepared speech. You said everything that mattered." The donations that night exceeded all projections. Jackson watched wealthy guests writing checks, many with tears in their eyes. Rebecca had touched something in these jaded, sophisticated people. She'd reminded them why charity mattered beyond tax breaks and social status. Later, they stood on the ballroom terrace, overlooking the city lights. "Thank you," Rebecca said softly. "For what?" "For believing I could do that. For seeing something in me I didn't see in myself." Jackson took her hands. "Rebecca, I see everything. Your strength, your kindness, your absolutely terrible baking skills." She laughed. "Hey, I'm getting better. You burned toast last week? That was the toaster's fault." He kissed her then, and this time it felt different. Deeper, more certain, like they were both finally admitting what had been growing between them. "Jackson," Rebecca whispered against his lips, "I'm falling for you. Fell for you weeks ago. I've just been waiting for you to catch up." They stood together under the stars, two people from completely different worlds who had somehow found each other. Jackson had run an experiment to test people's character. He'd discovered that true character couldn't be bought or faked. It could only be revealed through actions and choices. And Rebecca Torres, the housekeeper who used unlimited resources to help others, who spoke to powerful people with honest emotion, who saw worth beyond wealth, had revealed herself to be exactly what Jackson had stopped believing existed, someone genuinely good, but standing there in that perfect moment. Neither of them noticed the figures watching from inside the ballroom. Natalie and Olivia stood together, their expressions cold. "This has gone too far," Natalie muttered. "Agreed," Olivia replied. "Time to remind Jackson where he really belongs. Remind that housekeeper where she belongs." They smiled at each other, and their smiles promised trouble. The Storm Breaks Monday morning began with Jackson feeling happier than he had in years. The gala had been a massive success, raising over $2 million for the Children's Hospital. More importantly, he and Rebecca had crossed into something real, something that felt like it could last. He was reviewing investment reports when Paul entered, his face uncharacteristically grim. "We have a serious problem." Jackson looked up. "What kind of problem?" Paul set a tablet on the desk, displaying a news website. The headline made Jackson's stomach drop. Billionaire's housekeeper accused of charity fraud. Exclusive investigation? What is this? Jackson grabbed the tablet, reading rapidly. The article claimed that Rebecca had inflated costs for the hospital event, pocketing the difference. It cited anonymous sources and included falsified receipts that appeared to show Rebecca purchasing expensive items for herself while claiming they were for charity. This is completely false. I oversaw every expense personally. I know, sir. But the article is spreading rapidly. 3 major news outlets have already picked it up. Jackson's phone began buzzing with calls. He ignored them all, his mind racing. Where's Rebecca? In the kitchen, I believe. Jackson found her humming while preparing lunch, completely unaware of the storm breaking around her. When she saw his expression, her smile faded. What's wrong? Rebecca, there's an article. Accusations about you misusing charity funds. What? That's crazy. I didn't handle any money directly. Jackson showed her the article. He watched her face pale as she read, her hands beginning to shake. Jackson, I didn't do this. Any of this. These receipts, they're fake. I never bought any of these things, I know. She looked up at him, tears forming. Do you really know? The question hung in the air. Jackson opened his mouth to reassure her, but hesitated for just a fraction of a second. In that tiny pause, he wondered who had the sophistication to create such convincing forgeries. Who had access to enough information about the event to make it believable? Could Rebecca have been playing a longer game than he realized? The doubt lasted less than a heartbeat, but Rebecca saw it. Her face crumpled. You're not sure, Rebecca? No. I just need to understand how this happened. You need to understand. Jackson, you were there for everything. You know, I would never steal from sick children, but you're actually questioning whether I did. I'm not questioning you. I'm questioning the situation. Those are the same thing. Rebecca's voice broke. I thought you knew me. I thought you understood who I am. I do understand. No, you don't. Because if you did, you wouldn't have hesitated. She pulled off her apron with shaking hands. I grew up with people doubting me my whole life. Every foster home, every school, everyone always assumed the worst about the poor kid with no family. I thought you were different. Rebecca, please. Let me fix this. I'll hire investigators, lawyers. We'll prove these accusations are false. Shouldn't need proof, Jackson. You should just know. The phone rang again. Paul appeared at the kitchen entrance. Sir, it's the hospital board. They're demanding a meeting immediately. Jackson felt torn between his phone and Rebecca. Can you wait here? Let me handle this call, then we'll figure everything out together. Handle the call, Rebecca said quietly. I'm sure your reputation needs protecting. It's not what I meant, isn't it? Jackson stepped into his office to take the call from the hospital board. It was a disaster. They were panicking about the negative publicity, threatening to return all donations until the matter was investigated. When he returned to the kitchen 20 minutes later, Rebecca was gone. He found a note on the counter. Jackson, I understand you need to protect yourself and your business. I don't blame you for doubting me. Everyone always does eventually. But I can't stay somewhere I'm not trusted. Thank you for everything. The banana bread recipe is in the drawer if you want to try making it yourself. Probably you'll burn it less than I did, Rebecca. Jackson crumpled the note, feeling something break inside his chest. He had let her leave thinking he doubted her. In trying to be strategic and careful, he'd failed the one test that actually mattered. The investigation, Paul. Cancel everything, Jackson said, his voice hard with determination. Every meeting, every call, everything. We're going to find out who did this to Rebecca. Already working on it, sir. I've contacted a private investigation firm. Not good enough. I want the best forensic accountants, cybersecurity experts, everything. Someone went to elaborate lengths to frame Rebecca, and I'm going to find out who. Over the next 48 hours, Jackson barely slept. His team traced the fake receipts back to a sophisticated forgery operation. The IP addresses of the anonymous sources who contacted the media led to a cyber cafe, but security footage showed someone wearing a disguise, Whoever did this was professional, the lead investigator reported. They knew exactly how to cover their tracks. What about motive? Jackson asked. Who benefits from destroying Rebecca's reputation? Paul had been quiet during the investigation, but now he spoke up. Sir, may I suggest we look at who had the most to lose from your relationship with Ms. Torres? Jackson's eyes narrowed. Natalie and Olivia? They were both at the gala. Both had access to event information, and both have been notably silent on social media since the accusations surfaced, which is unusual given their normal patterns. Jackson made a decision. Set up a meeting with both of them. Here, tomorrow afternoon. Don't give them details. Just say it's urgent regarding the charity event. The next day, Natalie and Olivia arrived at Jackson's penthouse, within minutes of each other. He watched them exchange glances as Paul showed them into the living room. Jackson, darling, this whole situation is so unfortunate, Natalie began. I wanted to reach out, but I didn't want to overstep. Yes, such a shame about the housekeeper, Olivia added. Though I suppose it's better you discovered her true nature now? Jackson leaned back in his chair, studying them. What makes you so certain of her true nature? The evidence seems quite clear, Olivia said carefully. Does it? Jackson opened his laptop. Because I've spent the last 2 days reviewing every single transaction, every receipt, every communication related to the charity event. And I've discovered something fascinating. Both women shifted uncomfortably. The fake receipts were created using a specific accounting software. Software that only 3 people involved in the event had access to. He looked directly at Olivia. You were one of them. Olivia's face remained composed. Many people use that software. It's true. But the metadata on the forged documents shows they were created on a computer registered to your office. He turned to Natalie. And the anonymous tips to the media? They came from an account that was traced back to your social media manager's email. Natalie stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. Why would we do something like that? Because Rebecca represented everything you're not, Jackson said quietly. She was genuine. She cared about me, not my money. And you couldn't stand watching someone like her succeed where you failed. She's a housekeeper. Natalie's composure finally cracked. She's nobody, Jackson. We saved you from making a horrible mistake. No, you tried to destroy someone good because her goodness made you look shallow by comparison. Olivia moved toward the door. You can't prove any of this. Actually, I can. Jackson stood. My legal team has compiled enough evidence to press charges for fraud, defamation, and conspiracy. You'll both be hearing from them shortly, Jackson. Wait. Natalie's voice took on a pleading tone. We can work this out. I'll admit my social media manager made a mistake. Olivia will explain the accounting software confusion. We don't need to let this get legal. You attacked someone I care about. You tried to ruin her reputation to protect your own interests. There's no working this out. After they left, looking pale and shaken, Jackson slumped in his chair. Feel better, sir? Paul asked. Not even slightly. I have proof Rebecca is innocent, but I lost her because I hesitated to believe it in the first place. Then perhaps it's time to show her the proof and apologize properly. She won't want to see me. With all due respect, you won't know unless you try. The grand gesture Jackson spent another sleepless night planning. A simple apology wouldn't be enough. Rebecca deserved something public, something that showed everyone, including her, that he believed in her completely. The next morning, he called every major news outlet that had run the story. I'm calling a press conference at Riverside Children's Hospital this afternoon. Be there if you want the real story. He then called the hospital board. I have evidence clearing Rebecca Torres completely. I'm going public with it today, and I want her officially recognized as the hero she is. Mr. Hayes, that's quite sudden. The accusations against her were sudden. The exoneration should be equally swift. Finally, he called Rebecca's phone. It went straight to voicemail. He left a message. Rebecca, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I failed you when you needed me to have faith. But please, come to the Children's Hospital at 3 this afternoon. I promise it will be worth your time. He had no idea if she'd show up. At 2:30, Jackson stood in the hospital lobby, which had been set up with microphones and cameras. Reporters filled the space, their questions already flying. "Mr. Hayes, is it true you're defending your housekeeper? What evidence do you have? Were the accusations false?" Jackson ignored them all, his eyes on the entrance. 3 o'clock came and went. Rebecca didn't appear. His heart sank. Then at 3:15, he saw her. She slipped in through a side door, wearing jeans and looking exhausted. Their eyes met across the crowded lobby. Jackson walked to the podium and began speaking before he could lose his nerve. "Thank you all for coming. I called this press conference to address the false accusations made against Rebecca Torres and to expose the people truly responsible for this fraud." He laid out everything: the forged receipts, the traced IP addresses, Natalie and Olivia's involvement, the evidence his team had compiled. The reporters scribbled notes frantically, cameras flashing. But more important than the technical evidence, Jackson continued, his voice growing quieter, is what I should have said from the very beginning. I know Rebecca Torres. I know her character. I've watched her give everything to help others while asking nothing for herself. I've seen her make sick children smile. I've witnessed her use unlimited resources, not for personal gain, but to spread joy and hope. He looked directly at Rebecca, who stood frozen near the door. I know these accusations are false because I know her heart, and I should have said that immediately, without hesitation, without doubt. Rebecca, I failed you. I let strategy and caution override the one thing that should have been certain: my faith in who you are. Tears were streaming down Rebecca's face now. You told me once that you grew up with people doubting you, never giving you the trust you deserved. I promised myself I'd be different. Then, at the first test, I hesitated. I can't take that back, but I can spend the rest of my life proving that I know exactly who you are. The kindest, bravest, most genuine person I've ever met. Jackson stepped away from the podium and walked through the crowd of reporters directly to Rebecca. I love you, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Not because you're perfect, not because you fit into my world, but because you remind me every day what actually matters in life. You make me want to be better. You make me want to deserve you. Rebecca wiped at her tears. You really are terrible at apologizing privately. I hurt you publicly. I needed to apologize the same way. Jackson, you idiot. She smiled through her tears. I love you too. Even though you hesitated, even though you doubted, even though you have terrible instincts about when to be strategic versus when to just trust, I'm going to work on that. You'd better. He kissed her then. In front of dozens of cameras and reporters, when they pulled apart, the crowd of hospital staff who had gathered began applauding. Tommy, the little boy who drew superheroes, pushed through the crowd. Rebecca, you're back. Did Mr. Hayes finally figure out you're the best? She laughed, kneeling to hug him. He's a little slow, but he got there eventually. Just like you, getting better at baking? Tommy asked innocently. Exactly like that? 6 months later, the penthouse had changed. Oh, it was still luxurious and beautiful, but now it felt lived in. Rebecca's cookbook collection took up an entire shelf. Slightly burnt banana bread sat on the counter regularly. Off-key singing echoed through the rooms most mornings. Jackson stood in the kitchen watching. Rebecca attempted to make dinner while simultaneously video calling the children at the hospital to check on them.
Yes.
Tommy, I promise I'll visit this weekend. No, I'm not bringing Mr. Hayes' credit card this time. We've established I can't be trusted with unlimited resources. Jackson wrapped his arms around her from behind. I think you can be trusted with anything. She ended the call and turned in his arms. Smooth talker. Honest talker. He kissed her forehead. Rebecca, I've been thinking. Dangerous activity for you. It's very funny. I want to establish a permanent foundation for the hospital. With you as the director, Rebecca's eyes widened. Jackson, I don't have experience running a foundation. You have something better. You have passion and genuine care for the people we'd be helping. The technical stuff, we can hire people for that. But the heart of it needs to be you. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. She kissed him deeply. Okay, but I'm keeping the housekeeping job 1 day a week. Because I like cleaning your kitchen while singing off-key. It reminds me how far we've both come. That evening, as they sat together watching the sunset over the city, Jackson reflected on his credit card experiment. He had designed it to test people's character, to see who they really were when given unlimited freedom. What he discovered was that 3 women showed their true shallow natures. But Rebecca had shown him something far more valuable. She'd shown him that goodness still existed, that genuine love wasn't a fairy tale, that someone could see past wealth to the person underneath. More importantly, she'd shown him his own character in that crucial moment of doubt. He'd failed her test of faith, but she'd given him a second chance, teaching him that real relationships required not just love but trust, not just passion but unwavering belief in each other. "What are you thinking about?" Rebecca asked, noticing his silence. "How lucky I am. 'Cause you're a billionaire." "Because I'm loved by you." She snuggled closer. "You know what the kids at the hospital call us?" "What?" "Beauty and the Beast, though they're divided on which of us is which." Jackson laughed. "Let me guess. You're the Beast. They say I'm scary when I catch them not taking their medicine." "Terrifying," he agreed, kissing the top of her head as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Jackson realized the greatest wealth he'd ever accumulated had nothing to do with his bank account. It was measured in off-key songs, burnt baked goods, genuine laughter, and the love of a woman who saw him not as a billionaire, but simply as Jackson. The experiment was long over, but the life it had led him to was just beginning. And for the first time in years, Jackson Hayes was exactly where he belonged, home.